Okay. Good? Good afternoon. Welcome to the April 2021 meeting of the Community Planning and Preservation Commission for the City of St. Petersburg. This commission reviews proposed changes to the comprehensive plan, land use, and zoning, as well as historic preservation-related proposals, and makes recommendations to the City Council. To help prevent the spread of COVID-19 and to protect our more vulnerable members of the community, the City of St. Petersburg will hold Community Planning and Preservation Committee meetings in person. All individuals in any city facility will be required to comply with the public safety protocols recommended by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and local health authorities, including wearing a mask in common areas, maintaining 6 feet of distance, and other safety practices. Our agenda today includes quasi-judicial and public hearing items. The quasi-judicial items on our agenda will require the following quasi-judicial process. Anybody speaking before the commission on a quasi-judicial item will be sworn in by the clerk, located downstairs in conference room 100, prior to speaking. Staff, the applicant, and any registered opponent each have 10 minutes for their presentation. After the presentation, each member of the public who wishes to address the commission will have 3 minutes to speak after being sworn in by the clerk in conference room 100. We ask that you make your remarks brief and not repetitive of prior testimony. After the remarks, we ask that you please return to conference room 100 or remain in the hallway if there are fewer than 6 people, and you can maintain 6 feet from others. After the public hearing, staff, the applicant, and any registered opponent will have 5 minutes for cross-examination of anyone who spoke during this item, and then 5 minutes each for rebuttal or closing comments. We ask again that each member of the public stay outside in the hallway, conditions permitting, or return to conference room 100 for possible rebuttal by staff, the applicant, or registered opponent. During cross-examination, all questions are to be directed to me as chair, and I will in turn direct the questions to the appropriate person for response. At the conclusion of these steps, the commission will enter into executive session. Commissioners may ask questions at any time during the quasi-judicial process upon being recognized by the chair. All procedural questions are to be directed to me as chair. Lastly, once the commission has voted on your item, we ask that you continue your conversations outside if weather permits. This will allow us to safely move forward with your fellow St. Petersburg citizen CPPC matters. Thank you for your anticipated cooperation in these confusing times. Okay. Let me take a breath. All right, roll call, please.
Bell. Gertis.
Present.
Rogo.
Present.
Whiteman. Here. Winters.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Burke.
Here.
Michaels. Here. Wanamaker.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, we are approval for last meeting's minutes. Are there any questions, changes, comments? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Commissioner Winters, Commissioner Michaels, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Okay. We have a deferral from the original agenda. Is there anything, Mr. Kilborn, that we need to know other than that's being moved?
There is not.
Okay.
We are just taking some additional time to finalize the report.
Okay, so city file number 20903-00001 is being deferred till May. So we'll look forward to that next month. Okay, so we'll move right into our quasi-judicial portion of the meeting. Thank you. And Commissioner Wanamaker, would you read in this item, please?
Certainly.
If I could ask you?
Agenda item number 1 is City File number 21-902-00008. The request is the review of an after-the-fact certificate of appropriateness for the approval of as-built conditions of the new construction at 736 18th Avenue Northeast, a non-contributing property located within a local historic district. The owner is MTBH Holdings, LLC.
And Chairman, I have a conflict due to proximity. I live too close, so I have to recuse myself for this item.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
I do too.
Commissioner Winters, thank you. We'll give them a minute. We still do have a quorum, correct? Right? Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to presentations from the city. Mr. Kilborn.
Sure, and Chair,
Thank you.
before I begin with our presentation, I believe we are required to swear in several staff, including myself.
Okay.
Before we begin. I do, yes.
Thanks for keeping me honest, Mr. Kilborn.
You're doing great. Good afternoon, Derek Kilborn, manager for the city's Urban Planning and Historic Preservation Division. And Kate, will you be tracking time as well for the
Yes.
group? Okay.
Check that the clicker works, please.
Yes. Okay. This is an after-the-fact certificate of appropriateness, as you heard in the introduction, for property located at 736 18th Avenue Northeast. From the beginning of this proposal for new construction, Historic Preservation staff has provided counsel to both proponents and opponents. We recommended approval of the proposed plan. We reinforced our favorable recommendation during appeal to City Council, and the City Attorney's Office successfully defended against a legal challenge from opponents. So we have shown support for this application. Upon final inspection, however, Historic Preservation staff identified 4 important deviations from the previously approved plans. The applicant argued for relief, to which Historic Preservation staff responded that only one of the 4 outstanding items could be cured administratively. The 3 remaining items requiring your action today include front wing walls, a front gate, and a railing system across the front patio. Before I address the 3 remaining items, I want to bring your attention to this color rendering that was included on page 2 of the applicant's memo. You'll notice that this color rendering does not include a railing across the front patio space. The memo states that during a public hearings throughout the home's construction, this final rendering was used and prominently displayed to this commission. That's false. City staff reviewed our records trying to identify where this image was used, but we can only find evidence of a different color rendering showing a railing across the front patio. Here is a cropped image of the archive video from the May 8, 2018 CPPC public hearing. The image shows the first slide of city staff's presentation, which includes a railing across the front patio space. Here's a cropped image of the archive video from the August 23rd City Council appeal hearing, which again shows the railing, subject railing. During the same appeal hearing, the opponent used a different color elevation showing a railing across the front patio space, which you can see in the top right. And finally, during the same appeal hearing, I used this color rendering under cross-examination from the applicant's then attorney, Don Mastry. The color rendering again includes the subject railing. I raise this point of fact because it is the only rendering submitted to you by the applicant in support of the current request, and it demonstrates the many challenges that our staff has had managing this application and construction permit. Throughout this timeline, we have now dealt with 2 different law firms representing the applicant, 3 different architects and designers, and a series of plan updates, especially during the COA approval process from 2017 to 2019. The applicant's memo has placed special emphasis On the color rendering, the rendering shown here is the applicant's 2018 COA application. Color renderings can help the public visualize what is being proposed, but they are not traditionally used for regulatory purposes. In this instance, if the color rendering was applied in a way that is being suggested by the applicant, then there would be even more deficiencies than the ones currently under review. In this first slide, you can see that the window and door framing and details were originally colored blue, but installed as white. Since our Historic Preservation Code does not regulate color, nor were these itemized elsewhere in the report or construction drawings, it was not enforced. The French doors on the first floor patio were shaded to show depth from the wall plane, but these doors were later installed flush with the wall plane. The railings on the first floor patio and the gate were shown but not installed. And finally, this masonry wall has since been replaced with a combination of wood and chain link. The front wing walls were constructed flush with the front plane of the house. The applicant is requesting they be allowed to stay without reconstruction. Historic preservation staff believes the body of evidence demonstrates that a recessed wall was expected throughout the COA and permitting process. Historic preservation staff continues to recommend they be reconstructed with a recess behind the front plane of the house. The front gate, located at the west side of the main house, was not constructed. The applicant is requesting the requirement for a gate be waived. Historic preservation staff believes that the gate is an important design feature, helping to deconstruct the scale of the building along the streetscape and providing an important egress from the rear yard. Historic preservation staff continues to recommend the gate be installed. Page 2 of the applicant's memo states that any prior applications are irrelevant to the commission's analysis. Staff disagrees to the extent that certain changes were made from the denied 2017 application to the approved 2018 application that qualified those changes for review and resubmission. So what I highlighted on this slide for you here are contents from the 2017 COA application that was ultimately denied. It references recessed walls in several locations of the report, and it included specific conditions of approval requiring a recess and detailing on the wall. After that application was denied, they made a series of changes to their proposal, which qualified the application to then come back as a new, substantially different application for a new review. The applicant resubmitted in 2018 and included those changes in their application. You can see here a description from our staff report referencing that the wall was articulated slightly back from the line created by the facade, and it included site plan drawings with a recessed wall and a gate. Here you can see from the appendices of those documents lines suggesting that there was some recess to that wall where it meets the wall of the house. Again, appendices page 12 and 13. The applicant has rightfully pointed out that the wall location on this plan drawing, the east elevation, which is shown on the screen to the right, is flush with the front plane of the house. But this one elevation drawing continues to be refuted by the associated reports and all other plans in the permit set as highlighted in your memo. Again, here's a sheet from their permit revision worksheet, again, showing that line or separation between the wall and the house. Sheet T2 in their set showed recessed wall and operable gate. Here's the landscape plan showing recessed walls and a gate. More elevation drawings. Here's the right elevation showing the wall is recessed. And then we're back to this side. This is the east elevation, which shows that wall flush. This is the one elevation that I was referring to. And you can see this was submitted as part of the revision that came to this commission for a window and door change. Finally here, on this sheet, you have a modification that was submitted to our office on March 27th, 2020 to amend the wall on the west side of the property. And you can see even as late as March 27, 2020, their plan drawing is showing recessed walls with an operable gate. And perhaps most significantly, this is the property owner's affidavit, Exhibit A, that they submitted to you just before the last public hearing, dated March 5th, it was not dated on the document, but it was transmitted on March 5th of 2021. The property owner and applicant's own drawing at that time again showed a recessed wall and operable gate. Railing system is also under review. You can see here, this is the language from the original 2017 report. I've already reviewed why we think that is relevant. During public testimony to the CPPC on May 8th of 2018, Don Mastery, the attorney at that time, described the design changes, qualifying the amended application for resubmission, stating, quote, added wood features on front patio, which are similar to the balcony, added wood railings to the upper balcony and porch. And again, on August 23rd, he similarly stated, quote, added wood features on front patio walls similar to the upper balcony, and added railings on the porch. So again, we think it's entirely relevant to highlight that these were important conditions that carried forward from the 2017 denial to the 2018 decision to first accept the application for consideration and then to recommend approval of the proposal. I have some closing remarks. I'll save those till the end. And I appreciate your understanding as I obviously am struggling through the breathing of this presentation, this time with this particular mask. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kilborn. Okay. Sorry, I turned my page. We have, I want to make sure I say this right. Labby?
Labby, yes.
Labby?
That's unbelievably correct.
Mr. Labby, on behalf of the owners, welcome. You've been sworn in?
Yes.
Thank you. If you just state your entire name, your address, and then you have 10 minutes to present. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Michael Labby, 827 Snell Isle Boulevard Northeast. And before I begin, Mr. Chair, I have two procedural questions that are separate from the presentation.
I hope I can answer them. If not, I'll find the answer for you.
The first is just to accommodate COVID protocols. I'm going to be splitting my time with the actual owner of the property himself, Mr. McGinnis. So around 5 minutes, I'm going to stop. Can we have the clock stop just while I leave the podium and he approaches? So
I think that's reasonable.
6 feet of distance. That's the first question. And then the second procedural question, Mr. Chair, is the memorandum that was submitted a week in advance of the last hearing. Has everyone on the board been provided a copy? If not, I do have extra copies here available.
I can speak for myself, and I know I have. Has everybody else been provided a copy of that?
I was, but I don't have it. If you have an extra one with me.
I do.
I would also appreciate one. I did receive it last month, but I'd like to have it in front of me today.
Thank you, Mr. Labby.
There's two.
Thank you.
Commissioner Michaels, would you like one?
One more?
He's Michael.
That's what Whiteman. I'm sorry.
There we go.
It's not even Monday. I can't even make an excuse. Okay. All set? It's all yours, Mr. Labby.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. And first, I'd like to begin by saying that throughout this process, I have appreciated staff, and particularly Mr. Kilborn's efforts, as he noted, in supporting the application. I know there's been a lot of opposition. There was a micro-historic district created here from the opponents. The city faced a lawsuit, but the city has generally been supportive. Now, with regard to this current after-the-fact certificate of appropriateness, while I disagree with staff's analysis, I do understand why they're taking this position. It's supposed to be an objective analysis of whether or not the as-built construction complies with the approved plans. Like I said, I disagree, but nevertheless, we're here. So the three issues that are before you today. Number one, the wing walls. As Mr. Kilburn pointed out, this was not a condition of approval, the flush construction of the wing walls. And the final rendering, although there was a dispute about which final rendering controlled, regardless of which one, all of the ones that were just presented to you showed flush wing walls being constructed. The plans that were presented, as Mr. Kilburn noted, were inconsistent. One wing wall was marked as flush, one wing wall was marked as recessed, and it varied between the various construction plans that were used. So my client had to make a determination. And in the middle of construction, there's been a lot of issues in this case. We've had difficulty sometimes addressing some of the minutia, and not to any fault of staff, but they've been very busy with this file. We weren't able to get an answer to that. So my client did what he thought was reasonable. He constructed this in accordance with the drawing that was presented to you, members of the CPPC, as well as constructed them in accordance with recommendations from his architect. His architect, which stated that the wing walls, and this is referenced in our memorandum at page 3, having them flush actually is more consistent with other homes in the district. Outside of the subject property, there are 8 homes in this micro district. 75% of them have flush wing walls or no wing walls at all. The other 2 that are missing, the 25%, you can't see the wing walls from the street, so there's no way for us to determine without trespassing onto private property whether or not those are recessed. I suspect they are not. So building them flush would be historically consistent with the remainder of the district. In addition to those points regarding that, the staff memorandum, although there was a dispute again about the rendering, I have to pick a little bone here because it's supposed to be an objective analysis, but if you look at staff's memo, they actually went through a painstaking effort to advocate for recessed wing walls. And what I mean by that is they did a little CSI example here. They zoomed into our rendering. They changed the light distortion. They also altered the black and white consistency on the image to advocate for a position of recessed wing walls, something which is not clearly determined by the plans and not consistent at all with the district. So for that reason, we think the issue should be approved by the CPPC. Next issue is the gate. The gate, just like everything else, not a condition of approval for this application. Why is the gate such a big issue? Well, it's an issue for something that staff can't really consider. It's a safety issue. As you can see from the affidavits that were submitted in our opposition, my client has faced threats, has faced trespassing, and has faced significant damage to their property, including but not limited to a neighboring homeowner trespassing onto the property, puncturing the plumbing system, dropping ball bearings into that plumbing system, something which our plumber, who supervised the work, said could only be done with the intent of absolutely destroying the plumbing. So after it was all built, we had to go back, tear through drywall, rip open pipes, and fix this issue to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. That, along with my client actually returning to their property and finding neighboring owners upstairs, walking around inside, that's how dangerous this is. People have voiced very vocal opposition, but they've actually taken it to a physical level now, causing property damage, intimidating them by entering their home. I believe Mr. Kilburn was burned in effigy at a Halloween celebration for providing approval to past applications. Mr. McGinnis's private dating profile was posted online for neighborhood children to see. Posted out front of his house for neighboring children to see. It's very disturbing what's occurred here. And for that reason, although there is an operable gate shown on the plans, safety mandates that we don't include it here. There's no historical reason to have it. We could put up a big shrub in front of it. We could do something else to lower the mass. Final thing, the railings. The railings, while they are, and we acknowledge this in our opposition, on the drawing, they're once again not a condition of approval. So, is there any other home in this micro district that has a masonry porch with a metal or wood railing? No. Is there any other home in Old Northeast that has it? If there is, I haven't found it and staff hasn't pointed it out. There is simply no historic justification for that railing. My client at one time even asked city staff, if you can point me to any example of this occurring, I'll build it. But I don't know how to do it. I can't build something for which there is no existing example. For that reason, this isn't historically supported, and we believe that the CPPC should approve the certificate of appropriateness. I'm going to stop my time right there and allow Mr. McGinnis to come up. I will address other issues in rebuttal or cross-examination. Thank you for your time.
Oh, you know what? Did you send this to me at any point?
I did not. If that's the problem, I can wing it without it.
What are these materials?
Pardon me?
What are you trying to show?
Oh, just some stuff, just kind of like what
Yeah,
Derek
'cause-
showed.
The thing is, it's supposed to be submitted
Okay, well, then we'll pass, okay?
ahead of time, and it's there in
Okay.
the notice. That's the
Okay,
case.
in the introduction of the design guidelines. for
Mr.
Petersburg-
Mr. McGinnis?
I'm sorry,
If
Richard
you
McGinnis,
do me a favor, have you been sworn in?
Yes, I have.
Okay, if
730
you don't mind just stating your name and your address, please.
Apologize. Richard McGinnis, 736 18th Avenue Northeast.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you. In the introduction of the design review guidelines for St. Petersburg, there's a mention of
Sorry,
character-defining features of historic properties need to be preserved. I'm paraphrasing. What the staff is suggesting is that we do the exact opposite of that. First of all, let me address the wing walls. There was a mistake on the drawings. We had received from the city staff and visibly stamped directly on top of that detail which showed the wall flush to the house. When I told my guys, I said, when in doubt, look at the rendering. So they looked at the plans, they looked at the section which we build by. We don't build by site plans, we build by sections. The more detail, the more it drives it. And so they did it that way. Now, that's a mistake that we made or an error that we made based upon the inconsistency of the drawings. However, 90%, if you go around around Old Northeast, all of the walls in these era are flush. 90% of them, I've done it. Our architect, Don Cooper, is one of the most renowned architects of this style of architecture. He's built over 1,000 homes. All of his homes have flush walls. In addition to that, when counseling with the person who wrote the historic guidelines, and I said, well, what do you think about this? And he said, well, wasn't the issue verticality? And everybody was concerned about the height of the building. I said, yes. He said, well, how do you mitigate verticality by adding more of it? So my question is whether or not it was on the drawings can be argued. Whether it's the right thing to do can't be. It is consistent with the district, it's consistent with Don Cooper's practice, and it's consistent with the overall Northeast. As far as the rail goes, I'd be very happy to build a rail. I've tried 3 or 4 different ways to do it. It looks like hell, which probably explains why nobody else does it in the district or in Old Northeast. There's no such thing as a masonry structure, masonry parapet wall with a rail on top of it. None, zero. So why is staff making me do something which is inconsistent with the district, inconsistent with their guidelines, and inconsistent with Old Northeast in general? It makes absolutely no sense. If you can make sense of it, I can't. I asked Laura why. She goes, because I think it adds texture. Texture is not a criteria for historic design. I'll let my wife speak to the rail. I have been involved with many historic projects, huge projects. I have been on design review committees. I have joint venture with historic people. I've never seen anything as arbitrary and capricious as this kind of program. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. McGinnis. Okay, so we are going to move into the public hearing section.
were you going to speak?
Oh, there was a minute and a half left. Do they want to use that time then, or?
Or do you want to do it?
If we could reserve that time, just add it to our rebuttal time, that would be,
We can't do that.
Yeah.
okay, I'll go ahead and use it right
We'd
now.
like to use the rest of it now, that's
Sure,
fine.
no problem, Mr. Dima. What I would just like to add in the minute and a half remaining is, obviously, my client is passionate about this. He's a builder, this is his home, and he's encountered a lot of issues, most salient the safety issues in this case, and he just wants to get this done. He wants to get a CO. He wants to move into the property and live there. So that explains his passion, number one. The second issue that I wanted to address that we didn't really get a chance to touch on is all of these matters, staff's role here, and I respect it, is to look at the approved plans and from the historic perspective determine, is this consistent with the micro district? This is a non-contributing property with this home, what will be a 9-property historic district. As I've stated, the issues here, the wing walls, 75% of them are consistent with my client. The other 25% are undetermined. That's 6 out of 8. If you add his, that's 7 out of 9. The railings, no other home has them. He's willing to build them. He's asked staff to do it. And I understand staff's role is not to provide building plans, but if they could point to an example, but they can't. It just simply doesn't exist. And I don't think it's fair to ask my client to build something that no one's ever built before. The last issue with the gate, I fully acknowledge that there was an operable gate on there. It was never identified as a condition of approval. It was never identified as something that added historic context. There was some issue about whether or not it eliminates massing, but that could be addressed with vegetation. Mr. Chair, may I finish this comment?
Yeah, just briefly finish. Thank you.
Okay. It wasn't addressed through vegetation, but the reason why it's come up, he wanted to build it, is the safety issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Labby. Okay, so we'll move into public hearing. And Mr. Cummings, you're first up. Welcome.
Thank you.
If you would...
To show an illustrative PDF, some photos of these wing walls, or is that?
Mr. Dima?
They're supposed to be submitted at least 24 hours ahead of time, so.
Well, hey, you guys have changed this format a couple of times.
It's on the notice, though.
That's not a good way to start.
Yeah, so no, you can't show the photos.
The precedent has been set. We're not going to go there. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Cummings, if you would state your name, your address, please, and you have been sworn in, right?
My name is Arnold Cummings. I reside at 715 18th Avenue Northeast, which is part of this district, and I have been sworn in.
Thank you.
My property is one of the 2 properties that this district was created specifically to control our property rights. This has been going on for a long time, and what I really hope comes out of this is that we get a better process. I still need to build a house like Mr. McGinnis did, and I hope that we can get this worked out so it's not such a contentious operation. Let me just address the wing walls and the railings. There are 10 properties in this district. 5 of them have wing walls. 4 of those have flush wing walls. Of those ones with flush wing walls, 3 of them are flush on both sides, and 1 house has a wing wall inset at about 9 inches, which you can't even see from the street. Of the porch rails, 9 out of 10 houses have elevated porches. None of them have vertical rails. So I think we're arguing, introducing something in here with the rails that didn't exist prior. And as far as wing walls go, more have flush wing walls than not. So I don't see why this is being brought up as if it was such a relevant issue. I don't think it is that relevant. I think the house looks fine. I'm happy to look at it. I see it from my house. And I think that it's time to just say this is good enough and let Mr. McGinnis enjoy his property in peace. And I hope that as time goes forward, we have a better process. The city wants to take control of design process. You all need to be more proactive in getting out there and looking at it. There's no reason why this sort of thing should come up at the end. Those wing walls have been there for, gosh, probably almost 2 years by now. The building department has threshold inspections, and if you want to have that much rigid control over all the little changes that are made during a construction process, you all need to be out there making those inspections and making recommendations. Work with the property owner. It's not you against us. Can't we be working together on it? I would like to see that happen because I'm going to have to go through the same process, and I don't want to be in here doing battle with you in this us versus them kind of atmosphere for another 5 years. This has been 5 years that this has been going on, and the house is done, it looks fine, and it's time to just please approve it and let go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cummings. Okay, Dr. Jameson. Welcome, Dr. Jameson. If you would please state your name and your address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Dr. Donna Jameson. I reside at 736 18th Ave Northeast. I've been sworn in. I am a highly respected physician over 30 years. I've been devoted my life to a person's condition. I've never imagined anything more brutal than the acts against other people that I experienced getting the building permit for 736. For those of you that weren't involved, let me provide some history. The HD was created to serve the self-interest of our direct neighbors to stop us from building. It had nothing to do with historic preservation. In fact, Cobb stated as much in public hearing, quote, without preventing us to build, he would see no reason for the district, end quote. Moreover, these same people that lead the charge against us have since improved their property without even requesting approval from historic. I feel the city was complicit in this clearly uneven process by empowering as well as supporting our neighbors throughout the stealth planning of this district, in the first place in prioritizing their misplaced interest against ours. Some of the consequences since this ordeal: personal notes to our attorney were stolen when I left my seat to speak at the hearing. At one point, my exit was blocked and threatened inside the courtroom. I've witnessed numerous outrageous examples of prosecutable slander against my fiance, including a website titled, quote, Meet Your New Neighbor, full of lies and innuendos. Old dating profiles of ours were blown up at Halloween and displayed for all the trick-or-treaters, along with a gravestone of Derek Kilgore's name on it. Our renters were approached about taking a tree down on our property. When they said it was not their property and they couldn't provide permission, they proceeded to unlawfully enter our property and took the tree down anyway. I personally witnessed several incidences of verbal abuse, physical threats to workmen when building the house. At one point, a shoe was thrown at them. The behavior resulted in several police visits to the site. We in the city were subjected to a series of repetitive, harassing complaints about construction activity. Not once were we cited for doing anything wrong. To top it off, our plumbing was sabotaged by a sophisticated engineered plan to put expandable rubber pellets in the piping supply that resulted in over $10,000 worth of damage. We don't think it's a coincidence that our neighbor has a PhD in mechanical engineering. We had to replace locks on our construction gate over 5 times due to vandalism. Despite prominent no trespassing signs and the site being surrounded by a construction fence, we've witnessed at least 6 incidents of blatant trespass on the property within the house itself. We'll never know how many times this actually happened. So who'll be responsible for such outrageous acts? Our immediate neighbors. In sum, this pool gate was there for our convenience, not to serve as a key architectural feature. Of larger import, all of our plumbing for the pool is behind the gate, so we're not going to make it easier for yet another Unabomber-type act of terrorism. It's preposterous for my safety and feel secure in my own home from people that have evidenced mental instability, capable of petty, vicious acts, along with blatant disregard for the sanctity of our property rights, would outweigh an insignificant detail of a pool gate. We will no longer be bullied and live under act of terrorism, and ask for your consideration of extenuating circumstances in this matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jameson. Mr. McGinnis, I see you have a card here. Procedurally, we're not allowed to have you come back up as during this portion of the judicial. You had your time, and you'll have time through rebuttal and closing remarks, okay? Just wanted to give you a heads up on why I'm not about to call your name. Thank you. Okay, and then Mr. Hayden, I think I got that right. Okay, great. Mr. Hayden, if you would please give us your full name and your address, and then you'll have 3 minutes.
Yep, Tyler Hayden, 1399 49th Avenue Northeast. I've been sworn. In the interest of brevity, because I think we've already touched on a lot of the topics, and I understand that these comments are supposed to be limited to new issues, so I'm not going to rehash.
Thank you.
No problem. Not going to rehash on a lot of what was said, but in that same idea of keeping things brief, I just want to kind of express the juxtaposition of that with what Mr. McGinnis has gone through. It's just a guy that's trying to build his home. From the renderings, from me driving through that neighborhood, walking my kids and my dogs through that neighborhood, it looks just like all the other homes. So I just don't understand why this COA application cannot be approved and he can move on with his life, and we could all do the same. So for those reasons, I just ask that this get approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hayden. Okay, so any other public? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so moving out of the public hearing and into cross-examination. Mr. Kilborn, city staff?
City waves cross.
Okay, thank you. And then Mr. Labby?
The applicant will waive cross.
Okay, thanks so much. And then rebuttal and closing remarks. City staff, Mr. Kilborn?
Sure, thank you.
Thank
City
you.
has several closing remarks. First, we did not speak to any of the criminal complaints that were included in the staff report because it's outside the scope of our review. I will confirm for the commission, though, since you've heard it referenced several times, that my name was tombstoned on a Halloween display. So there was some documented evidence of that type of behavior in the neighborhood. With regard to the application, first, I want to address a couple things that you received and read in the applicant's memo. First, on page 3 of the applicant's memo, it states that, quote, none of the approved construction plans specify the amount by which the wall should be recessed. Were this truly an important detail, such a measurement would surely have been included. We disagree with this statement, and we disagree with it because construction plans are drawn to scale, so we don't need measurements to be labeled in every instance because in our review, we have those scaled construction drawings in front of us, whether it's a site plan, an architectural rendering, or a construction permit detail. Second, at the bottom of page 3, the applicant describes a situation where, and he testified to this today, he was forced to choose between constructing the wing walls flush with the front plane of the house, as shown on the east elevation, or recessed, as shown on all other related site, architectural, and construction plans. Following a denied COA and at least 3 different public hearings, including an appeal to City Council and a lawsuit, the most obvious choice should have been to consult with city staff, both in Historic Preservation Office and the Construction Services and Permitting Office. That didn't happen. We provided no counsel on that question, or our counsel would have been consistent with everything that we presented to you in our report and in the presentation today. Third, regarding the gate, there has been some reference to safety. Clearly, there is concern about public safety here. We do want to highlight, though, that along that west elevation, what was originally presented as a masonry wall has since been approved for modification to a chain link fence. And a chain link fence is not going to provide the same type of security that a masonry wall might. Finally, the applicant's memo appears to demonstrate really a fundamental misunderstanding of the COA and site plan review process. So I want to address this not just for this application, but generally. On page 2, the memo suggests that only itemized conditions of approval are enforceable and even states in a footnote, quote, indeed, how can any homeowner builder be expected to anticipate and comply with conditions of approval that are not included by staff? Respectfully, this is disingenuous. The homeowner builder is expected to comply with their own site plan, architectural and construction drawings that are approved by the CPPC, the City Council, and approved by city staff through the permitting process. Except for one east elevation, all other plan drawings submitted by the applicant included recessed wing walls plus an operable gate and railings. Any suggestion that city staff must now itemize potentially hundreds of conditions separate from the included plan drawings that were approved is not supported by past practice. And for that reason, we recommend that you deny the after-the-fact request and require execution of what was originally debated through multiple public hearings and a lawsuit and decided by previous council and commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kilborn. Okay, Mr. Labby.
Let me go to this side just so I can get some eye contact.
We're going to have you stay over here. We're going to keep this for city staff.
Security protocol, actually.
You're keeping me from getting a good relationship with the CPC here.
I'm sorry, Mr.
It's
Labby.
COVID. It's COVID.
I know you want to give me a high five, man, but I got to keep you over there.
I would love to.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, you have 5 minutes, Mr. Ladden. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I once again want to reiterate, I appreciate staff's position. You know, they have their hands tied to some degree. They're looking at plans and trying to determine compliance with it. What I take a little bit of umbrage with is advocacy on behalf of a particular position. As I see it, staff is supposed to come here and take a look at, does this comply? If it doesn't, our recommendation as to whether or not there should be approval should be based solely on whether the requested change impacts the historical integrity of the property or whether the proposed change would make the property inconsistent with other properties in the district. Mind you, this is a non-contributing property for which there is, as stating the obvious, no public opposition to the requested changes. Now, as far as the specific changes themselves, I want to talk about those real quick. The wing walls, we've kind of gone back and forth about that. I think staff's recognized that there was some inconsistency with the plans. They think there was more that showed recessed than that showed flush, but bottom line, they were inconsistent. And I understand Mr. Kilbourne's position that staff can't put hundreds of conditions of approval in plan review. I get that. I don't want them to do that. But when you're faced with something for which it's not a condition of approval, it's unclear from the plans, and this isn't their only property, this isn't, an attack on staff, but it's difficult to get an answer from them sometimes. And when you're building a house, waiting 3 or 4 months to get a response is just not consistent. And I will say there have been instances in this case, as well as others, where it has been difficult to get a response. And that's no fault of staff. This is one of thousands of properties that they're responsible for, and Mr. Kilbourne was right to say that there's been a ton of work on this file from their office. They can't respond to every request. We had to make a call here, and the call we made was what we believed was correct, was consistent with historic integrity, and what was shown in the rendering to this commission. Not approving it would mean destroying the walls that are currently there, knocking them down and rebuilding them. It seems like a harsh remedy for something for which it was at least arguable whether or not we were complying, and at best, or at worst, it's an issue for which there is no historical basis for putting them recessed as opposed to flush. Again, based on the other homes in this district as well as the Old Northeast more broadly. Next, the issue with the railing. Again, what would it mean to not approve this after-the-fact COA with regard to the railing? It would mean requiring somebody, without being able to point to any existing example, to construct something that has never been done before, to be putting a vertical metal or wood railing on top of a masonry parapet. That just isn't done, and it doesn't mean it can't be done, but to ask my client to figure that out, no one's ever done this before, go ahead and do it, and even though you're building blind now, we're going to come back and take a look after, and if we're not satisfied, you're still not getting your certificate of occupancy. That's a harsh remedy here. Last is the gate. Again, say it till I'm blue in the face, there was a gate in the plans. I get that. There is a documented safety issue here. No one's denying that. I get what Mr. Kilbourne's saying, that why would you have a chain link fence instead of a masonry wall? Somebody could ask Mr. McGinnis that from the chair position or the CPPC board here. You guys could ask him that. I don't know the answer. But bottom line, I know that having an operable gate there impacts their safety as residents of that property. And I would hate for the CPPC, based on something that really has no historic basis, to deny an after-the-fact certificate of appropriateness for something that he is desiring to make his home safer and to keep his family safe. I would hate for something to happen after the fact as a result of there being an operable gate on this side of the property. Property damage is the least of my concerns. I'm talking about physical safety of my clients. So, for all those reasons, and let me just apologize real quick. I'm born in Canada, so I'm sweating through this suit in this room very quickly. Luckily, we have this barrier here between me and Mr. Dima. All of these issues, again, just to beat a dead horse here, are not conditions of approval. They're not clearly stated in the plans, and even if they were, we are permitted to put forward an after-the-fact certificate of appropriateness application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Labby. And real quickly, thank you to everybody for keeping on the time. That's much appreciated to all of us, and especially me, that I don't have to bang this gavel at somebody. Okay, so moving into executive session, or excuse me, yes, executive session. Commissioner Burke.
Thank you, Chair. And let me tell you, I'm getting very angry up here. And if I get out of hand, I understand if you gavel me and shut me up, and I'll accept that, and I'm serious. May I ask Mr. Labby a question?
Absolutely.
Mr. Labby, you had mentioned in your opening statement, you said that staff had changed and altered photos in regard to the wing wall. Can you explain to me, and I would like you to be very specific if you're accusing the staff of committing fraud and in some way altering documents to support their case. Is that what you're accusing them of?
No, I'm not in any way accusing staff of committing fraud, and I could direct you to the specific portions of our memorandum, and I think Mr. Kilbourn would acknowledge this because it states it. Actually, let me grab city staff's memorandum.
Which presentation are you about to reference so I can get there?
I'm referencing the city staff report. Let me turn to the appropriate page. It is on page 8.
Anybody need one?
And Commissioner Burke, again, I want to acknowledge this is not in any way an accusation of an intent to deceive this. I'm not saying staff did that in any way. What I am saying is what staff says themselves in their report, which is they take the rendering that we're relying on, they crop it, and they acknowledge this. We've cropped the color elevation. They zoom in and enlarge. They adjusted the brightness by 40% of the image, and they altered the contrast levels of the image by 75% in order, quote, to show hard shade line at the corner. And that process is in part what staff used to say that the rendering itself showed a recessed wing wall. Does that answer your question?
It does. I felt that the original statement was a little accusatory, and I took great offense to that.
And I apologize for that. That's not the intent.
Just for future reference, I would agree with him. When I read your original memorandum, I was as fired up as he is currently, because it came off accusatory. I'm glad it's not. I'm just like,
understood. I
give you a heads up.
appreciate the criticism, and I apologize if it came across that way.
Thank you, Mr. Levy. If I may continue, Derek Kilbourn, to you and your staff, I want to compliment you on not losing your cool since 1917 throughout this entire application. You've worked diligently on this for 4 years, because I've been here since the beginning, and you guys have done a great job. And I want to say that I'm sorry that your name was on a tombstone in the Old Northeast. I'm very emotional about this. I mean, I've been dealing with these people since 2015, and they go out of their way to take care of these issues. And for someone to put your name on a tombstone and put it down there is just absolutely ridiculous. I'm sorry that you had to go through that, because that isn't fair. It's not fair to you and your family.
That was not the applicant today. That was a neighbor.
I understand. It's not fair to you and your family. All right, some things I've heard. Us versus them. Let me tell you us versus them. City staff has been part of us since the beginning of this. It's not city staff against the owner of this property. City staff has been in us. They haven't been of them. City staff, you talked about advocacy, and Mr. Labby had mentioned that they shouldn't be here advocating on behalf of these changes. Baloney, they've been advocating for this application since the beginning. They've been advocating so much that we didn't want to do this. And they pushed, and they went to city council. They advocated to city council that this application be approved. They defended a lawsuit. That's part of that. So I'm sorry that what's happening now does not meet your approval, but city staff has been an advocate for this right from the beginning. Mr. Labby again referenced how the staff is so busy. I understand they have hundreds of applications. That's because we keep getting these type of applications that keep coming back to us and rehashing the same old things over and over again, and that's ridiculous. Now, the next thing, all of these new things that that your arguments for, you're wanting to have your cake and eat it too. This whole application from the start has been, we don't care what's consistent with the neighborhood, we care what's consistent with the plan and what's consistent with what's allowed in the territory. Let's start with verticality, the big issue, the big issue on the table. We don't care that there's no other house in this neighborhood that's that tall. That's not part of the plan. Our plan is to put this house up because it's meet regulations. And guess what? That's fair. I mean, when you ask for that, that's fair. But now all of a sudden you want to say, hey, we want to now build this to meet all of these, to look just like all of the other homes in the neighborhood that don't have the wing walls and don't have the metal railing on top of the parapet. One last thing on the lack of integrity in this presentation. This whole wing wall on top of the parapet. We can't build something that's never been built before. You go to every Ruttenberg home that was built during the 1970s, they have these same type of railing walls around all their planters, and they have metal railings that go in between them. And it's just absolutely ridiculous that you can say we can't build something that's never been built before. I don't know if hundreds of thousands of homes have had them, and I can specifically speak to Ruttenberg. I apologize. I think I wouldn't have got so emotional if some of the, if I didn't feel that our staff here was being attacked. I'm not even a member of the staff. So I hope my emotion didn't get in the way. This home needs to be built exactly like it was presented to us, including the French doors that haven't been brought up today. And I will not support anything that says to the contrary. So thank you for allowing me to get that off my chest.
No, thank you, Mr. Burke. I think you communicate our sentiment about the City of St. Pete staff for all of us. I appreciate it. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Wanamaker. Go ahead. Commissioner Wanamaker, please.
Let me begin by saying this is a lovely home. It's well designed. It's well proportioned. There was a lot of challenges because of the FEMA flood elevation requirement. But I spent a lot of time driving through the neighborhood just recently, and it's a very lovely home. It's very well designed. I know the architect very well respected, and I agree with everything you've said about him. So a set of construction documents is composed of plans by the architect, the landscape architect, the civil engineer, and all of the other engineers. And there will always be discrepancies in those drawings, always. It's impossible to do a perfect set of drawings. However, the floor plans are generally utilized to depict layouts of walls and doors and windows in the horizontal plane. Building elevations are used to depict elements in the vertical plane. Renderings, three-dimensional renderings, are rarely used as technical drawings for construction. Discrepancies are then you go back to the floor plans when you're looking at horizontal elements. So in regards to those wing walls, the architectural floor plan is silent. Those wing walls should have been shown on the architectural floor plan, but they were not. They were shown on the landscape drawing and on the civil engineer drawing. And even between them, there is a little bit of discrepancy. The setback of those wing walls can be approximated as being about 30 inches, even though there's not a dimension, because the swing gate is going to be about 36 inches. So it's very easy to approximate about how far back those wing walls were set back from the front plane of the house. The decorative railings on the low walls are vertical details, and so they are shown on the architectural elevations. In regard then to the renderings, shade and shadow are very useful tools for communicating differences in planes. And that rendering absolutely had shade and shadow where there were recessed doors, recessed windows, and I agree with the recess of the front French doors. There was shade and shadow shown, as well as on those wing walls. So all of those details and drawings are communicating to the contractor how to put together this home. Where there are discrepancies, yes, you need to ask. But in my opinion, the items that the staff are recommending is compliant with what those drawings would have told me and what they are telling me. So I'll stop there, but I'll stop there for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Wanamaker. Commissioner Whiteman.
I'll pass it this time.
Commissioner Rogo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I will echo something that Commissioner Burke said to start, and that is that I think all of us, except for our chairman, have been serving on this committee for a number of years and have dealt with this particular project in several different iterations, and so we are pretty well familiar with what we are being presented with today. However, I think I have a question, because I've heard historical integrity, I've heard compliance with approved plans, and I've heard safety. I don't believe that safety is really an issue that this commission deals with or even should deal with or consider as an issue for us to try to base our decisions upon. But just maybe to put that to bed, how tall is the masonry wall that currently exists?
Mr. Labby, do you know?
Which masonry wall?
The masonry wall that is currently flush with the plane of the front of the house.
Wing walls.
The wing walls, thank you.
Approximately 5 feet.
5 feet. And the chain link fence is probably 5 to 6. Just maybe to put the question of safety to bed, whether there's a gate there or not, I think if somebody really wants to get into that backyard, they're going to get over a 5-foot fence without any difficulty. I do believe the gate was clearly shown on all of the plans that we have seen and should indeed be there. The question of historical integrity. I guess this issue has come before us today because there is a historic district, and therefore we have to deal with the certificate of appropriateness. But I feel there has been non-compliance with approved plans, and that sounds to me like a building permit issue. But it is coming before us because we are in a historic district. Do I understand that correctly, Mr. Dima?
Correct. So instead of an after-the-fact alteration to a building permit or an after-the-fact variance, which would go to the DRC, this implicates a COA, and it's an after-the-fact alteration to a COA.
Thank you. That helps me. I will also reference the photographs that are included within the materials that were presented to us by Mr. Labby, both last month as well as today. And I'm looking at all the other homes in the neighborhood, and we've used the term, I think, texture. I recall when we first were looking at the plans for this particular home, that we were very concerned about the vertical mass that is presented to the street. There's not a lot of, and I'm not an architect, so there's not a lot of gables or extensions forward. You look at these other photographs and you see gables, you see roof lines that are not particularly straight. They are, they're broken up. You see some interesting design features, even with front porch structures that isn't so much present in this particular home. And I know that we were striving to come up with some texture, to some relief for that vertical mass presented to the road and to the neighborhood. And not having the railings, not setting back the walls, those were two pretty small things in my mind that would have helped the situation. Didn't make it perfect, but it made it better. And I'm very disappointed that those two issues are here before us again in an after-the-fact, as-built question. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogo.
Now I'm ready.
Okay, Commissioner Whiteman.
I don't know who to ask the question to. Is that a fixed gate? Is there the gate? Is there a gate there, or is it open space?
Mr. Labby? Mr. McGinnis?
We took the gate out and just made a wall.
If you could come up to the mic, please. Thank you so much. That way anybody watching or listening can hear as well.
As you can see, when you look at the rendering, you'll see that the gate was never a prominent part. In fact, it's landscaped out. And the way that the rendering looks today is exactly the way it looks, the way the house looks today is exactly the way it presented itself in the hearing. In other words, the gate was behind landscaping. There's no walkway to it. It was designed for one reason only, is that's where we have our pool equipment. And another place that someone can go into and do what they did to my main house.
So, I'm sorry, I just want to make sure. So you're
So
saying
right now
there
we
is a
just have-
door or there isn't a door?
We didn't put the gate in, we were concerned, so we just built a wall there.
Okay, so there's a wall. There's no door. There's no
Correct.
opening.
Right.
Okay, great. I think.
It's a concrete block wall, or what?
Correct.
It is? Because I can't tell from the rendering what is actually there. It looks like.
Well, that's my point. You can't, because it never was meant to be an architectural feature. It was meant to access the pool.
Okay. That was all I had.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Whiteman. Commissioner Michaels.
Just a few comments here. I am bothered, and I support the earlier comments here about the integrity of the staff in this process. I think the staff have been very independent and very professional in the way they've handled this application, as they have with so many other applications that have come before us. And in that regard, they made a recommendation here for approval at one point, which I voted against. I voted against this proposal on the grounds of mass and scale. And on the other hand, I voted for it with respect to the Monterey design. I thought that was acceptable, even though the Monterey design is not a common design that we find in our city. I'm thinking that with respect to the mass and scale, all of that is tied to the three issues that we have before us: the wing walls, the gates, and the railings. And if you go to the staff report here, the staff state that they believe the gate is an important design feature helping to deconstruct the scale of this building along the streetscape and providing an important egress from the rear yard. It was not a recommendation, as I'm reading this and as I recall it, that necessarily related to the historic pattern of most buildings within the neighborhood there. Just some common sense comments here with respect to the gate and safety. I have a masonry wall around my house, and I have a gate, and that gate can be locked, and that enhances the safety of my house and of my backyard. I think, that's something that can be done here to address the safety issue, even though, as it has been said, it's not specifically something we typically consider. And with respect to railings that are fastened in some fashion to masonry, again, using my own experience here in my own neighborhood of Bahama Shores, we have ranch-style housing there, classic Florida ranch-style housing, and there's all kinds of grill work and iron work that is incorporated into those houses, including patio walls that have a railing that is connected to masonry structures in the front yards. So I don't see that as being something that is very unusual here. And finally, you have the references here to wing walls, gates, and railings throughout the staff reports that were approved by this commission, and they were incorporated in one fashion or another, including the stipulations, the conditions of approval. And if you go to construct, it would be, again, common sense to me, if you go to construct a building and you suddenly find that there is some issue that is not working for you, you don't just ignore it and proceed on. You come back to the city staff that I'm sure would be quite willing to discuss a serious issue of safety or of it's not something that can be done from the standpoint of construction. You do those kinds of things. You don't just proceed on and ignore. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Michaels. I have a question for Mr. Kilborn. Thank you, Mr. Kilborn. I know there's been, this kind of came up with Commissioner Rogo's comments. There's been a lot of talk of, the impact historically to these changes. Is that really the issue, whether these changes are historically significant, or they didn't meet the plan and it was part of a previous COA, all of this approval process, part of a previous COA, and you didn't follow the plan? I'm trying to understand if that's even a relevant argument, I guess.
Sure. I think there's a couple ways to answer your question. Part of what we are doing through our recommendation is protecting the integrity of the process. So here you had an original application. It was denied. The applicant then made substantial modifications. They resubmitted. We accepted that resubmission based on the collection of changes that were made. Those collection of changes specifically addressed the concerns that were the underlying basis for the original denial on the first application. Several of those items are exactly what we highlighted for you today. The railings to create depth variation and texture across the front. The wing walls stepping back from the front facade to create, again, depth variation. And the gate to create or break down some of the horizontal nature of the wall, but also create more variation on that front elevation that you see from the streetscape. So all of those directly extended from the original application that was denied, and it wasn't just presented in the material, it was stated as such in the public hearings by the legal representation for the property owner in the 2018, the subsequent COA application. So now you have these things that were promised through that process that went through several public hearings, an appeal, and a legal challenge, and now the request is to remove those items. And at this point in the process, we think that that is a direct challenge to the integrity of this long process that most of you have been a part of and so eloquently described today. So it's process. The other part of it is historic integrity of the district. There is variation out there. Some of it is shown in the photographs that were included. Some of the wing walls are flush with the front plane of their adjoined house. In those examples, we do believe that there are other appendages to the front of those houses that create depth variation that Commissioner Rogo highlighted in his comments, that you don't have in this example, except for a grade level patio projection and a second level balcony that comes off the second floor. And then finally, it goes to design integrity and architectural style. There was a lot of disagreement in the public hearing process before. Is this a Monterey style house? And there was a lot of time spent debating whether or not it was a Monterey. A Monterey style does have many of the elements that are included in this proposal, but railings are a common feature in that architectural style. So there are three different things here: integrity of process, historic integrity of the neighborhood, and the integrity of the architectural design that was selected and put forward for this long public hearing process.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kilburn. As the one that hasn't been all through, I feel like I'm the lucky one. I haven't been through all of those, but I appreciate that, Mr. Kilburn. Any other questions or comments?
Chair, if I may put forward a motion?
Commissioner Burke.
And just a reminder that all motions need to be put forth in the affirmative, and therefore that's why I'm doing this. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve an after-the-fact certificate of appropriateness for the approval of an as-built conditions of the new construction at 736 18th Avenue Northeast.
Second.
Commissioner Wanamaker, second. Real quick before we vote, having not been through this entire process, with the history of this, I really wanted to, you wanted me, I think, in this one, and just, I don't think this is going to go your way. I know that the city of St. Pete is trying to not make this more difficult. We're trying not to make this more difficult. We're just trying to listen, and I can tell you from the guy that wasn't through all that, this just doesn't make sense to me. And so I'm sorry, I guess. And, you know, I hope that the city gets back the shine, certainly with the McGinnis family. So, because it certainly deserves it, and I'm sorry it didn't come out that way, or it doesn't seem like it's about to come out that way. So, okay, let's vote.
Gertis.
No.
Rogo.
No.
Whiteman.
No.
Burke.
No.
Michaels.
No.
Wanamaker.
No.
Motion does not pass.
Mr. Labby and Mr. McGinnis, thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. Okay. How about a 5-minute recess? Would that be okay? We'll take 5 minutes.
Sing que sera, sera, and it'll be all right. Is your spirit so high? I'll be bidding you a sweet good night, and darling, I sing your favorite lullaby. Darling, I sing your favorite lullaby. And through 1,000 dawns, darling, I'll love you more and more. As lonely days fade the stars dancing low, mountain trees rustle, crooning to me hymns of time gone by. They sing que sera, sera, and it'll be all right. As I gaze into the night, night, I'll be bidding you a sweet good night. And darling, I sing your favorite lullaby. Ooh, darling, I sing your favorite lullaby. Oh, darling, I sing your favorite lullaby.
Okay. Welcome back to April 2021 CPPC. We are going to continue with our agenda with our next item on the agenda. Commissioner Wanamaker, if you would please read this item in. Please and thank you.
Agenda item number 2 is City File number 21-903-00002. The request is an owner-initiated designation of the Axford House as a local historic landmark of the St. Petersburg Register of Historic Places. This is Quasi-Judicial. The owners are John Evans and Michael Labby, and the address is 4705 Fifth Avenue North.
Okay. We'll start with presentations from the city. Ms. Perkins, welcome.
Hi, welcome. Good afternoon. Commissioners, Kelly Perkins. All right, and this is for an owner-initiated designation of the Dr. W. Homer and Mrs. Ethel M. Axford House at 4705 Fifth Avenue North. We've received no public comments for this item. So this property, the background of this case, the owner submitted the application in February 2021. We are recommending that the boundary follow the entirety of the parcel. So the building was constructed in 1941 by Cade B. Allen and Sons for the Axfords. It's one of the later properties of Cade Allen, and it's one of the few houses built by Cade Allen outside of Allendale Terrace. The Axfords were a couple from New Jersey. Homer Axford was a doctor.
I'm sorry, I'm just gonna have to hit pause here, make sure that the applicant, if they're here.
They aren't here.
They are not here, we can confirm that? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Kelly.
Oh, no, it's all right. The owner never clarified if he was coming or not. Seemed a bit concerned about COVID, so.
Okay, all right, my apologies.
No, it's all right. We had this issue last time, so I get it.
All right.
Homer Axford was a doctor who was a pioneer in X-ray technology. He also served as a mayor and other political positions in his hometown in Bayonne, New Jersey. Unfortunately, he had health issues and had to retire in 1930. After wintering for several seasons in St. Petersburg, the Axfords moved down full-time in 1940 and decided to build a house. This is one of the early examples of a ranch-style house. It's one story, very horizontally organized massing, which is why I had a hard time photographing it, so I apologize for that. So even though it's sort of a ranch-style house, which is a little more atypical from the early Cade Allen houses, it still uses a lot of the materials known by Cade Allen, such as the stone veneer at the entranceway, the use of stucco exterior, the heavy barrel tile roof. He also threw in interesting architectural fenestrations, such as the shouldered arches at the front porch, which has since been enclosed. And the house also has a number of 2-over-2 wood windows that are horizontally organized. This is very typical of late 1930s and early 1940s homes, particularly those built by Cade Allen. Here's other photographs. So the house, like I said, is a early example of a modified ranch, so it's more of an open floor plan that is set around a central living room. The focus of the living room is this sandstone fireplace and chimney. You can see that the sandstone is used sort of in details around the house, such as the planter. And then the other photo shows a close-up of that stone veneer at the entranceway, which surrounds the large picture window with surrounded by 2-over-2 windows. And you can see another photograph of the massing from the back of the house and how that tile roof really provides a lot of texture and depth for the house. So staff reviewed the application and owner research and found that the property meets 3 of the criteria for eligibility, criteria D, E, and F, mostly for its association with the work of Cade Allen and being recognized as sort of a transitional house moving towards that ranch style that was common in the mid-20th century. Staff found that it met 6 of 7 factors of integrity, no longer meeting association. And then these are a list of all of the primary character defining features that staff found. We don't need to go through them all, they were in the staff report as well. So staff is recommending approval of the property at 4705 Fifth Ave North to be listed as a local landmark, and for this commission to recommend approval to City Council. As stated before, the owner is not here to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Just real quick, I thought I'd note that we've welcomed back Commissioner Winters and Commissioner Wolf, as there no conflict exists going forward, and Mr. Burke has been excused. So I just thought I'd at least note that. Okay, so with no owner or applicant present and no registered opponent, we'd move into public hearing. Is there any public hearing? Okay. Any cross-examination, Ms. Perkins?
No cross-examination, no rebuttal or closing remarks either.
Okay. I like it. So we'll move right into executive session. Any questions, comments from the commission? Yeah, Commissioner Wanamaker.
Just one quick question, please. Does the home sit on a single buildable lot, or is it on?
Home is on 2 buildable lots.
Okay.
Part of that later carport, that carport addition that was added in the 60s is extended onto that 3rd lot. Staff does feel that that lot being undeveloped, mostly undeveloped, is important to the building's significance, as that was sort of part of the idea of the house was to be set kind of into center and have a large landscaping program and a service yard that was specifically.
Okay, so this brings up the follow-up question. What if the homeowner at some point wants to parcel off that 3rd or 2nd buildable lot and build a separate home on that? Now, they would have, I mean, this has come up before,
Yeah.
and I just want to make sure we all understand what the implications are, because you did identify the entire lot as being historic. So
I understand your question. Actually, I think I'd like to ask that to legal, because I do think that is a concern on staff, that we do find that undeveloped lot part of the significance of the property.
You
Partially
do.
undeveloped.
I mean, that's kind of the question. Is you do find that to be part of the historical significance?
Yes.
Okay, so in the past, in limited circumstances, I can think of at least one Kate Allen house where we specifically drew the boundary of the historic designation on the landmark to the 4 corners of the structure, so that there was a possibility to parse off the remainder of that property. In this case, we're making a finding that, our staff is making the finding that the entirety of the property contributes to the historical significance of the landmark. And in that case, parsing that off and doing new construction would require a COA.
So it doesn't prohibit the homeowner from building on that
Oh, no.
buildable lot? It just would require a COA?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I knew that. I just wanted to make sure that was sort of stated and in the record.
Thank you. Commissioner Roga.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am in support of the proposal from staff. I think this is an excellent building, and thank you to Derek. I've learned the term depth variation, and this building certainly shows that as well. But the windows appear in some of the photographs to be tinted and maybe reflective. Does that in any way detract from the historic integrity of the structure?
I do not believe so. Are you thinking of the large picture window in the front of the house?
Mm-hmm.
It might have had a tinting applied on the interior. I would not, that's something that we don't normally review, too much. Some of the glass around the house has been replaced with like a textured glass. I think that was for privacy, but none of those were on the front elevation. Only that picture window that had a little.
Typically, our concern then would be the framing, the muntins, those sorts of things, as opposed to the type of glass that's being used.
I mean, if someone came forward with a proposal to really change, so strongly that type of glass, we would probably recommend against it. But normally for window replacements, they need to meet the energy efficiency levels anyway, which tends to put in a little bit of a tent. So it wouldn't be anything, I think, out of the norm.
Thank you.
Commissioner Winters?
Yeah, I don't know the ownership history on this house, but it's quite remarkable how intact it is, both on the exterior and the interior. I was personally kind of wowed by the windowsills that are still the tile, and of course the tile bathrooms. So it sounds like the applicant stepped forward. This is not any kind of a historic part of town. They took the initiative themselves, and I just have to say I'm so pleased that people are doing that and stepping forward as individual property owners who acknowledge and recognize the value of what they have and what an asset it is for the city. So many thanks go to the property owners for doing this work and obviously being ready to rehab it and keep it intact. Mm-hmm. And I'll move that we approve the nomination to the register.
Second.
We have a second. Okay. Any comments before we vote?
Just to compliment the staff on the history that was included in the staff report here. Really, really excellent and well done.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Agreed. Okay, let's vote.
Curtis,
Yes.
Rogo,
Yes?
Whitman,
Yes.
Winters,
Yes.
Wolf,
Yes.
Michaels,
Yes.
Wanamaker.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Moving right along on the agenda. Agenda item number 3.
Is City File Number 21-902-00014. The request is for the review of a certificate of appropriateness for demolition of a detached garage and addition to primary residence at 315 22nd Avenue Northeast. The owners are Craig M. Provencher and Elizabeth L. Provencher.
And Mr. Chair, just in the interest of transparency, they had approached me about possibly doing this work, but had selected another contractor, and I've discussed it with Mr. Dima, who said that there is no conflict, but I just wanted to let everyone know that I had been out to the house and looked at it.
Great. Thank you very much for letting us know.
Can I suggest we ask the applicant if that's okay?
Mr. Dima?
I mean, it doesn't rise to the level of a conflict in either state or local law. So the disclosure is enough.
Right.
Good enough.
Thank you very much. Okay, city presentation. Ms. Duvacott, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Laura Duvacott, Historic Preservationist for the City of St. Petersburg. As stated, we have a COA application for 315 22nd Avenue Northeast. 2 letters supporting the application were submitted by the applicant from owners of a property, one property that was adjacent to the subject property and within the local historic district, and another that is directly facing the property but is without or outside of the local historic district, but both were in support of the application. The subject property is a contributing property to the Granada Terrace Local Historic District, shown here. And shown here is an image from the newspaper as the subject property neared completion in 1935, as it appeared at that time. And here it is today. The subject property is a Mediterranean Revival style house. Both the house and the detached garage were constructed in 1935. Here we have the existing rear elevation of the subject property and the detached garage. Both of these images are from the application. The rear elevation features some non-historic alterations. Some evidence of deteriorated conditions at the detached garage building were also submitted with the application. The garage building was approved for use as an accessory living space in the 1980s. Here are the current and proposed site plans of the subject property, with the primary residence being at the bottom. The detached historic garage building will be replaced with the 2-story addition that includes garage space. Here are floor plans with a bit more detail shown. When the parcel was split, one of the conditions was that no setback variances be granted in the future. So now, instead of the garage building, which encroaches into the setback, the proposed addition will be within the required setbacks. And here are the proposed elevations of the rear addition. The proposed design uses a differentiated roof form with a narrow second floor to create the appearance of a breezeway connecting the existing residence to a two-story hipped roof massing, which references the footprint of a detached garage. So even though the residence with a detached garage will be replaced with a single building, it does reference the historic configuration that's common to Granada Terrace. The placement of the addition will make it minimally visible from the rest of the district. The addition was shown here in blue. So to summarize, staff evaluation yields a finding that the general criteria have 3 of 4 relevant criteria satisfied, 11 of 11 for new construction, and the demolition proposal is generally consistent given the proposed replacement. So staff recommends approval with conditions that the windows be installed with a traditional setback, which is typical, and that all other permits be obtained and the approval be valid for 24 months. That concludes my presentation. The property owners are here, and I believe we also have some slides from them as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ms. Dubicott.
Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Preventure, welcome.
Thank you.
If you would just state, you've been sworn in, correct?
I have.
If you
Craig
just
Preventer.
state your name and your address, please.
Yep, Craig Preventer, 315 22nd Avenue Northeast, and I have been sworn in.
Great, welcome.
Thank you very
You have
much.
10 minutes.
It's really not, I'm not going to take that much time.
Oh, you got it, so
Thank you.
that's up to you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. I think first and foremost, just like to extend a huge thank you to staff members Dubicott and Perkins, who helped us quite a bit in the lead up to this, along with our architect, Elizabeth Halleck of EDAD. I think the findings actually covered a lot of what I did, so I don't want to bring up everything over and over again, so I'll just be really brief. Really for us, we're just trying to make the best use of the lot in a way that stays true to the existing structure, but also the neighborhood itself, also within the confines, meaning no variances required within all the setbacks. So really trying to follow the confines of what we're working with, but trying to stay true to the style. For us, it's also a little bit of a safety thing. And obviously, it's a preference to keep a historical building in place. The accessory building is in question here. We did have EDAD take a look at it. She determined that it's really not structurally feasible to keep or even fix at this point. And it's not really useful for our new use of it, which would be a garage. So that's sort of one piece there. And then staff member Dubicott mentioned it, but we did get letters of support. These are 2 neighbors that are directly next to us. The Sarah Lavelle and Martin Hudolt are right next to us. I believe you guys are pretty familiar with their lot. They were probably going to be the most impacted and will have the most vision or see the addition the most. And then the neighbors to our south, William Norris and Allison Knoll, who will see it from the street, which I know is an important piece of this in terms of keeping everything looking in style and to code, and so them providing support. So I think that's it from my statements. Just kind of let you guys ask questions and hopefully go from there.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Preventure. Okay. There's no registered opponent. Any public comments?
No.
All right. Moving right along. Any cross-examination from the city, Ms. Dubicott?
None, thank you.
Any from you, Mr. Preventure? Okay. Any rebuttal or closing remarks, Ms. Dubicott?
None, thank you.
Mr. Preventure?
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we'll move into executive session. Yeah, Commissioner Wolf.
Oh, just because I had been out to the lot, I will tell you that it was an extremely challenging site, with access by a limited driveway from the rear and kind of a odd-shaped lot, conditions that the preventers did not create. And I thought the architect did a very good job trying to deal with the lot the way it was, and I would fully support it.
Thank you. Commissioner Winters.
I have a question for staff. This changes the footprint of the building pretty significantly. I'm assuming that it meets the floor area ratio requirements.
Yes.
And I'm even more concerned about the impermeable surface piece, because not only is there more building on the lot even after that garage goes, but there's a lot of pavers on either side of the breezeway. So what about the impermeable surface requirements?
One of the planners with our division did take a look at these plans and sat in some pre-application meetings with us and determined that no variances would be needed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Commissioner Michaels.
I've got a couple of questions about the application. The new structure which is being proposed, I like that. I think it's a good design. It's sensitive. That does make sense. I notice in the staff report here that there is the statement, I think this is on page 4, continuing to sensitively repurpose existing space for changing needs is considered to be the most appropriate approach to expanding living space in historic homes. In this case, it was considered but not ultimately selected as an option by the current owners. I'd like to have a response from either the staff or the applicant on why it was not chosen as an option. And the other thing with the application here is that you're demolishing a significant part of a landmark. I understand the garage is part of the landmark. And whenever that happens, alarm bells go off. Is there justification for doing that? And that then gets to the issue of, as the staff report quotes the application as saying that the building is in poor condition due to roof leaks, rot, mold, and structurally, I guess they mean structurally unsound there. I'd like to hear more about that. What actual verification has there been on the part of the applicant and the staff that this building, the garage, is in such a condition that it absolutely has to be torn down?
Mr. Preventer?
Sure, thank you. Yes, so I mentioned it very quickly in the presentation, but EDAD, the architects, Elizabeth Halleck, came out and did an assessment of the structure, both for integrity and usability, and determined that neither were safe. If you look at some of the pictures in the application, there's actually a huge hole in the roof that was patched up and repaired. Also, just in passing with another neighbor who lives right next to us just to the west, she mentioned that 2 owners ago, the structure itself looked like it was coming down, but the new owners were able to come in and fix it up enough to make it, I guess, usable and sellable to us. So I guess I think that answers your second question. The first is more about usability, I believe. And right now, the accessory building is used or designed to be an in-law suite, if you will, or another room with a bathroom. Really, not to rehash anything, but we need space for some cars on our lot. I think most of you remember us coming for an application for a driveway in the front, which obviously didn't make sense, deemed so by the council here. So for us, this makes the lot a little bit more usable, but trying to stay as close to the historic guidelines and style as possible.
Thank you. And city staff are in agreement that the building is not salvageable?
I did not independently verify the information that was submitted as far as the condition. They did submit photographs of roof leaks and mold. I mean, it's an accessory building. It's not the primary building. So,
I do agree that accessory buildings are an important part of historic districts that contribute in this way, but I think that all things considered, given given the owner's needs for the property, this will help them rehabilitate the primary structure and make the primary structure and therefore the district, retain that integrity.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Duvecat. Commissioner Winters.
Just want to thank the owners for persevering on this and being really sensitive to the historic district requirements. So thank you, and I'll move approval with conditions as laid out by staff.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Wolf, second. I would second what Commissioner Winters just said. Thanks for doing it the right way and going about diligently and being okay with a little bit of a curveball, not getting your driveway, and then coming back with what seems to be a great idea. And I know it's a beautiful home now, and it's going to be a beautiful home when this is all done. So thanks for doing that the right way.
Really appreciate it.
Okay, let's vote.
Gertis,
Yes.
Rogo,
Yes?
Whitman,
Yes.
Winters,
Yes.
Wolf,
Yes.
Michaels,
Yes.
Wanamaker.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Mr. and Mrs. Preventure, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
Go enjoy that beautiful home. Okay, moving on to item number 4 on our agenda.
City file number 21-902-00016 is a request for a review of a certificate of appropriateness for the alteration of 1001 Bay Street Northeast. The owner is Glenn M. Fish.
And Mr. Wolf, do we have to excuse you again here, or is this a...
I did not see that in the application. Staff?
We do?
Yes, you live within.
Okay.
He's got a
Okay.
proximity
I was reviewing that
conflict.
on a small screen, so I didn't pick up on that, but I will recuse myself. Thank you.
I feel bad. Half. Half.
Yes.
We'll bring you back in a minute. Okay. Yeah, we've got enough. Okay, so we're going to move on with city presentations. Ms. Perkins? Did he steal your clicker?
No, Kate did.
Oh, sorry.
Welcome back.
Yes, hello again, Kelly Perkins, Historic Preservationist with the City of St. Pete. We are here today for COA for alterations at 1001 Bay Street Northeast. We received no public comment for this project. So this property is a contributing structure to the 200 block of 10th Avenue Northeast Historic District. You can see it highlighted here. So this is a frame vernacular structure that was constructed in circa 1923. There have been a few additions added onto the rear, which are part of the subject areas that's under review today. Also, the front porch was enclosed at some point, as you can see in the photograph above with that door. So this project, pretty much, the owner is proposing to reopen the front porch, which is being reviewed under a different COA application. And that's where the kitchen is currently located. So they need to relocate the kitchen towards the rear of the property, which is why they are proposing to enclose that existing rear porch to gain more square footage. They also, due to deterioration of the roof in that area, they would like to construct a new roof line with an extended roof deck. Also, 2 windows will also be replaced. So here's a 1951 Sanborn map. As you can see, it only incorporates the 2-story main massing of the building. The later 1-story additions were not shown here. So this is the existing west elevation as seen from Bay Street. The circle with the number 2 is the existing rear porch that is to be enclosed. So here's the proposed west elevation with the enclosure. You can see the changes highlighted in red. and the windows that are to be replaced. Here's a photograph of the rear elevation of the building showing sort of that porch enclosure that will be enclosed and incorporated into the living space of the house. So staff reviewed the project and found that it generally met all the criteria for COAs, alterations, and new construction. And staff is recommending approval with conditions. Number 2 of these conditions, the area italicized, I forgot to put in my staff report, just because the elevations show 1/1, but the application includes 6/1. So we want to make sure to put in the conditions of approval that any muntins should be external with contoured 3-dimensional grids that replicate traditional muntin design. So staff is recommending approval with the conditions that are shown in this presentation. And the owner is here, and if you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perkins. Okay. The owner, Mr. Fish, would you like to present?
We don't feel it's necessary. The staff has done a marvelous job.
I like that answer. Okay. Any public hearing?
No cards.
Okay. Any cross-examination from the city, Ms. Perkins?
No cross.
Okay. Now, you'd like to waive cross-examination as well? And then any final remarks?
No, thank you.
You guys are making this easy. Okay. Okay, we'll move into executive session. Commissioner Wanamaker.
I'll just comment that opening up that porch will really improve the quality of that home tremendously, and the way that you've relocated the kitchen in the back and taken that one wall down and rotated it, it's really going to be a wonderful living space. Really, really nice. I really commend you. It's going to be a beautiful home. It already is, but it's going to be even better once that porch is opened up. And then I have one other question. I just want to note that it appears that the roof is 5V crimp or standing seam metal, galvanized. What is that roofing material?
Most of the roof is 5V crimp that came before this commission in 2019. Under the previous owner.
Okay.
And the commission approved it because it was a frame vernacular house.
Right. Okay.
The roof where that roof porch is, I think, is still the asphalt shingles because it has that roof deck on top, and they didn't go through the process of removing it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you're just extending that deck in the back? Is that what you're doing? You're just making it larger? Very nice. You can invite me over anytime. Any other questions or comments? We have a motion?
Move approval. Approval of the staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a second. Okay. Any other quick questions or comments before we vote? Let's vote.
Curtis?
Yes.
Rogo?
Yes.
Whitman?
Yes.
Winters?
Yes.
Michaels?
Yes.
Wanamaker?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Congratulations.
Great.
Thank you for being here. Have a great day.
Wine and hors d'oeuvres as soon as the porch is open.
I'll bring the wine.
Might regret that.
I got a guy.
We'll all show up there, huh?
All right. Item number 5 on the agenda.
Is City File Number 21-902-00020. The request is for the review of a certificate of appropriateness for the approval of rehabilitation of the main building and detached garage apartment at 2710 2nd Avenue North, a contributing property located within a pending local historic district. The owner is Andrew Blazer.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Wanamaker. That's right. Yeah. City presentation. Ms. Perkins, welcome back.
Hi, just to let you know before I start, the owner, Andrew Blazer, was going to attend this meeting, but notified me right before that he's unable to attend.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess hopefully, he said hopefully there's no roadblocks. So this is the item for COA for 2710 2nd Ave North. We received no public comment for this item. So this property is located within the pending historic district for Southwest Central Kenwood, which will be heard at City Council on Thursday. The property is recommended to be a contributing structure, and staff agrees with that recommendation. The property was initially built in around 1920, in a different part of the city, another sort of failed 1920s subdivision, and it was relocated to this spot in 1932. As you can see from the front facade, the house has undergone some alterations, including the enclosure of the front porch, some of the alterations and removal of window openings, and then the application of vinyl siding over the asbestos siding that is underneath. So the applicant is proposing to open the enclosed front porch, the replacement of the non-historic front door with a craftsman-style fiberglass door, installing new 3/1 vinyl windows, the removal of the vinyl siding and installation of smooth hardyboard lap siding, and then with a new trim and skirt board at the base, removing a lot of the vinyl soffits to expose the rafter tails, restoring the front gable vents and decorative brackets, and then installing a new tankless hot water heater on the east side elevation, and then repairing the existing roof and repointing the chimney. The description mentioned the detached garage. That is a later phase that's not under review at this time. So here's sort of a site plan that kind of shows the overall property, and the area that's shaded in gray, this is phase 1, is really where we're focusing for this COA. So here's the proposed elevations. As you can see, they're proposing to reopen that front porch, install new windows on the front elevation where there is evidence that there was windows at some point, and then applying hardyboard over. I asked the applicant why they weren't just going to leave the asbestos siding exposed, and they stated that when they applied the vinyl siding, they broke some of the pieces, and so there's a lot of broken pieces, so rather than go through the mitigation of removal, they just want to cover it back up. So staff reviewed the application and found that it generally met all the criteria for certificates of appropriateness and alterations. And so staff is recommending approval with the conditions listed here that are the same as the ones in the staff report. So that is the conclusion of my presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Perkins. And with no owner present and no public comment, I'll let you defer on cross-examination and closing remarks, I'm assuming. Okay, and we'll move into executive session. Any question or comment from the commission? Commissioner Winters.
I was just really impressed with the packet. So thanks to staff and thanks to the applicant. The current photos, the architectural drawings, noting each change on the drawing was super helpful. And a big thank you for this restoration work. They're taking a very thoughtful approach to it, phasing it. And I'll move approval with conditions noted by staff.
Second.
Mr. Rogo, second. Okay. Let's vote.
Gertis.
Yes.
Rogo.
Yes.
Whiteman.
Yes.
Winters.
Yes.
Wolf.
Yes.
Michaels.
Yes.
Wanamaker.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Awesome. Thank you. Before we, if there's any updates or announcements, Mr. Burke mentioned it earlier, but I just want to say, from somebody that gets fired up pretty easily, that's me. I'm talking about me. The calm of city staff is really commendable. I'm jealous of it, frankly. I wish I had a little bit more of that, and I wish more people had more of that. And I think it's awesome representation, Mr. Kilborn, from you and the entire city staff. And it makes me super proud. And I needed to say it. I know Mr. Burke mentioned it, but yeah, awesome.
Thank you.
And I wish I had that. I got too much of my dad in me, and so thank you. Yes, Commissioner Winters.
To that, I happen to be a neighbor. I live about a half block away from the McGinnis house, and I have to say I'm just so sad that this whole historic district process, which I do believe the neighbors initiated it because they were concerned about the new buildings. They weren't, I think, as committed to the historic designation piece. It's really hard to stop, a proposal because of what the underlying intentions are. But I'm just super sad as a neighbor to see it because it's created incredible dissension and anger. And it doesn't make preservation look good. But I have to commend the staff again for rising to the occasion. I hate that so much staff time was spent on this. It makes me crazy because there's so much to be done. There's so much positive work to be done. And we end up spiraling like this. And it was multiple parties that caused it, and it's not a shining moment for the city, so for that city neighborhood.
That being said, I will say thank you to this commission and going about it the right way and sticking to the process because you certainly can get caught up in that emotion, and I think it's commendable, and I agree that those actions are not representative of this city, but I think when we can stick to the process and stick to the plan, at the end of the day, that is reflective of this city and how it operates. So, but I totally agree. It's that part of it is significantly sad. Okay, any updates or announcements
You're all looking at me.
from anybody?
I have several, just very quick, not a lot of detail. Hopefully everybody saw that one of the cases that came before you before, Grace Lutheran Church, Church of the Beatitudes, 28th Avenue and 8th Street North, got a lot of really great press this past couple weeks on an adaptive reuse project and conversion from a former church, unfortunately, now closed, to a single-family residence. And the project turned out, in my opinion, great.
Unbelievable.
And really representation for how valuable the adaptive reuse process can be to certain properties. And so we appreciate your work and contribution on that application, and we think it turned out great.
I think he's talking to everybody but me because I don't think I was here. Good job, guys.
Also wanted to mention that St. Pete 2050, which is our visioning process, very important to our planning work and vision going forward for the city. We continue to work on that. We're supposed to be going back to City Council in the month of May, tentatively May 6th, to present to them a resolution for final approval of the plan, so that, or final acknowledgement of the plan, so that we can then shift gears and actually execute the plan through a series of comp plan and LDR text amendments and map amendments that we are hoping and planning to bring to you throughout the summer months. So that is the update on that. Month of May is Preservation Month, so encourage each of you to think about what you can do to share the word on that. Obviously, as Commissioner Winter shared, we're very busy with a lot of applications, and we have wonderful ideas for how to promote Preservation Month, and we'll try to implement some of those. We do have a lot of big applications coming through. And so I'll use that as my transition to mention that there have been several conversations at the council level about initiating a designation application for the Mirror Lake neighborhood. So we are calendaring out a process now where we will be making first a notice, and then an information presentation and workshop with potentially affected property owners, and then bringing that information to the city council for them to consider whether or not to formally initiate a designation application. And that really completes what I wanted to mention for you today. And of course, if any of you have any questions about preservation or planning matters, to reach out and let us know, and we'll try to get you the answers that you need. Thank you.
Commissioner Winters.
Do you have a timeline in the Mirror Lake work?
A lot of it's going to be contingent upon our notice and when we can conduct that information meeting. So right now we're looking to see, is it possible for us to conduct that information meeting in mid to late May, which would allow us to then go back to city council sometime in June. But it's very tentative right now. As soon as we have something set, then we will share that with the commission here.
Thank you.
Commissioner Michaels.
What about the community benefit agreements and the Marina plan? Are those items that are going to come before the CPPC?
The community benefit agreement package will not. Just a kind of a heads up, there's a committee of the whole on that this Thursday. So if you are interested in it, and tune into that. We are putting that ordinance and the process and the substantive aspects of that in our Chapter 2 of the City Code, which is an administration. So that's not going to come before either the DRC or the CPPC, even though it touches on some of the topics that one or both boards are used to dealing with.
Yeah. And the Marina plan?
Not to my knowledge. As that evolves, there is potentially a need for some type of map amendment or comp plan text change or LDR text change, but I have not seen or heard that that is something that will be required. So my initial response would be no, but I'm not sure, and I will look into that question for you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Roga.
Mr. Chairman, you were kind enough as to compliment us all for our volunteer service a few minutes ago. And it reminded me that we've received a second invitation to a volunteer recognition that the city is putting on, I think next Tuesday evening. And I was glad to receive that second reminder and RSVP'd yesterday. So I hope that we can all maybe get a little more recognition for volunteer service. So thank you.
Thank you for the reminder, Commissioner Rogo. I just swiped right to make sure it was on my calendar. Okay. We have a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Winters?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Have a great day. Thank you for being here.
Sweet